Louise Wallis. Now, Louise owns Karamel with Frank, her partner, and Louise is an exceptional activist. She's been vegan for many, many years and has been active for many years. And back in the early 90s and late 80s, she went undercover in 2 animal testing laboratories and recorded footage from within inside those laboratories and exposed a lot of the horrors that go on in the vivisection industry. And as a result of that, yeah, whoa, thank you. And as a result of that, she was elected president of the Vegan Society, a role that she actually abolished when she was president, yeah. And Louise is the person responsible for creating World Vegan Day as well, the globally renowned and acknowledged day that we celebrate vegan. So I'm sure you can all agree that we are in the presence of some really truly humbling and amazing activists tonight. So thank you so much all for agreeing to be here, and a special thank you to Louise and Frank for letting us use this space again. Okay? Yeah. So I think a good place to start really might be kind of just asking individually, all 3 of you, what kind of made you decide that being vegan wasn't enough and that becoming an activist was the necessary step for you in your journey?
For me, it was just putting myself in the animal's position. Gary Rofsky used to say that a lot, and it really helped me empathise with their position. And I just knew that if that was me there, if that was my family member there, if that was anyone else, I would stand up and do something. And because animals are so innocent and vulnerable, they need us to defend them. And I felt like I'd been through a lot in my life, and I've been in these confrontations with people where I was defending and doing all this stuff, and this reason actually meant something. So that's why I stood up for them.
For me, I think what happened is when I started learning about this, I was really shocked that if I tell people about it, they put their hand over their ears basically and tell me not to tell them anymore, or that I'd spoil their dinner. So that was like a big shock for me, because I thought, well, I don't even really like animals that much, but I don't want to hurt them though, but I'm not a big animal lover, yet I'm telling animal lovers, hey, there's this thing, it's called veganism, and it's like so good, and you don't have to hurt animals to eat food, and people didn't want to hear about it. So that was like this big, strange thing for me, where I realized that I knew something, and I understood something, and clearly a lot of people who should agree with it couldn't click with it, couldn't understand it, and obviously it made all the logical sense in the world for me. So that's when I decided to be more active in spreading a message for them. But a big shift happened for me. There was 2 main things. One, when I spent time with a rescued bobby calf, so like a waste product of the dairy industry, and that's when it really became a legitimate thing. It wasn't just something on YouTube happening, I saw a victim of the dairy industry, a baby who'd been ripped from his mother. That definitely took it to another level. And then another time when I was starting to spend a lot more time inside factory farms and just realizing the sheer magnitude of this issue. And inside those factory farms one time, I remember there's this little tiny baby pig just squealing, like very faint squeaks, I think probably like dying in its last moments. And I looked up from that, and I looked around, and there was a whole shed full of them. And then I thought about the other sheds here, and then I thought about the other farms in the area, and then I just kept expanding that to the world, and I just realized, I summarized it with this, that some things in life are more important than your own. And that is what really drove me to not just be an activist, but dedicate and commit a lot of time to helping these animals, realizing that I've got everything I need and they've got absolutely nothing.
Thank you. It's really interesting listening to other people's motivation. Animal rights activism and veganism went hand in hand for me. I was really lucky because I was befriended by a sort of slightly older woman who used to come into the newsagent shops that I used to work in part-time. This was like when I was 17, probably, going on 18. And she was encouraging me to go along to the local animal rights group, because she knew I really liked animals. So I did, and where I met my first boyfriend, it was great. And very quickly, I was vegetarian at that point, and then very quickly we got to know some vegans who weren't particularly sort of common around that time. I'm talking 35 years ago here. Anyway, I got to sort of meet some vegans, and I was really intrigued. It was like, vegans, wow, next level vegetarianism, what's all this about? And then I came across a Vegan Society leaflet that just was like this very simple A5 single-sided leaflet that just sort of very simply and concisely and very logically explained what veganism is. And it just, for me, it just cut out all the crap, you know, it's just go straight to the heart of the problem. Don't muck around, just, you know, what's the point of continuing to eat animal products? You know, why not just cut them all out? And so I just connected with, the minute the argument was made for me in this like really logical way, it just connected with me. And I was already involved in animal rights, so then the two things sort of welded. And that's the way it's been ever since. For me, what really has informed my activism over the years is that I've always tried to think, what is the most effective form of activism? Now obviously this can change, you know, as you grow older, as the times change. We've now got the internet, wow, that's a really radical step. Because back in the day, we didn't have that at all, you know. So one of the reasons I went undercover was because it was very hard to get access to the real evidence showing what the hell was going on behind closed doors at that time. And I was inspired by a friend. I woke up one morning, went to the newsagent and found these shocking photos of beagle dogs, like really horrible photos, undergoing experiments, and discovered that this was as a result of an undercover investigation that my friend had done, completely unbeknownst to me. And it blew my mind because, first of all, it was so effective. It's on the front page of loads of national newspapers. And secondly, it was like, how could she have done that without me even kind of knowing about it? And at that point, that was what decided me. I thought, right, the minute I saw that, I was like, right, I want to do that, you know. And not that long after this, I actually did. That was quite a long time ago as well. But really, like, as I say, it's kind of evolved my activism. I consider this place my activism these days, because one really effective way of changing people is to make it easy for them. You know, to treat, what we do here is we try to treat veganism just as being completely normal, you know. We get a lot of people coming here who probably wouldn't choose to go to a vegan restaurant. Because we do loads of events, we can kind of entice people in with live music, with comedy gigs, with poetry, with burlesque. We had some raunchy burlesque here last night, which is quite popular. So, you know, yeah, we attract all kinds of people in who, as I say, possibly wouldn't be seen dead going to a vegan restaurant, but they come here because they're coming for the entertainment, and then it just so happens that the food is vegan. They might not even know that, but generally most people tend to eat when they come, they enjoy the food, and they find out it's vegan, and then it kind of removes that weirdy vegan sort of stereotype. And they've done it. They've eaten their first vegan meal, you know, even though they've probably eaten lots of vegan meals in their life, like beans on toast. It has actually destigmatised the whole thing for them. So we consider this really effective at the moment. Anyway, I'll shut up now. Here you go.
I think what I find quite inspiring about Louise's story is the journey that she's gone on. I think we're talking tonight about positive and effective activism. And the word positive can be deceptive, but positive activism doesn't mean happy activism necessarily, and going undercover or protesting and things like that might not always be happy, and there might always be smiles on our faces, but the reason they're positive is because they're effective and they bring about real substantial change. I think Louise's story of going into those laboratories and doing something that was very selfless and put her life on the line quite literally, but was very positive in the sense that it brought about massive change, and it really kind of opened people's eyes to the reality of what goes on in these laboratories, and kind of sheds a very dark picture of what we allow to happen in this country. So, I think that's really very truly inspiring. Now, this question, I guess, probably applies a bit more to Joey and James, and one of the biggest elements of your activism, both of you, is kind of the ability to have a conversation with people. And you two seem to really pride the idea of kind of a one-on-one conversation and kind of having that individualistic discussion. And I wonder, what is it about that kind of setup and that kind of connection you can have with people on that level that you find so enticing as an activist?
Enticing. I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm passionate about it. I love talking to someone on their level. I love building rapport with different people, different demographics, older ladies, younger guys. I see them as the same as me, and I know that the spell that they're under, because I was under the same spell, and I know what they're about to say to me before they say it. If you look at me when I'm interviewing people, I'm anticipating what they're going to say. I'm just waiting for my turn to give them the answer. I don't know. I get a hunger for it, this conversation, this polite discussion, and if they start getting worked up, I love to bring it back down a few notches and just speak logically and calmly. And I think it's an art to it, and yeah, you have to be a very feely person. You have to feel where the conversation's going, and I can't get enough of it. I really do. I'm glad that I post a lot of my conversations online, because then a lot of people can get an idea of how to do it. But it's something about that interaction that when you finish this interaction, you just have this buzz. You've got a buzz, and it's important to enjoy your activism, and I enjoy that a lot.
Alright, so everybody knows the vegan stereotype. Angry, annoying, aggressive, pushy, judgmental, good looking. I love talking to people because one of my favourite things is just shattering, apart from the good looking bit, shattering that stereotype to pieces. So when I talk to people, like, I'm so nice, I try to be so nice and respectful and like just full of love. And then it comes to veganism and I see it's just ticking over, like, hang on a second, vegans aren't like this, what's going on here? And I think that when you're talking to people one-on-one, it's much easier to be like that because it's normal, it's how you really are. Online, it's so easy to be another one of those people who usually comment on our stuff, like aggressive and angry and things like that, and you lose tone when you're trying to talk on the internet and things like that. But I think one of the things that I really love about talking to people one-on-one is that they can see you, a vegan, and realise you're just a normal person just like them, and all those things that they thought about vegans are now kind of not true, like they're at least under question. And I think that's one of the most important things about what we can do as activists right now, is because I think a big sticking point is the common idea of what people think of vegans. And I think that stops a lot of people wanting to look into it more, or even a lot of people wanting to take that step because they don't want to be seen as all those adjectives that are quite negative. And so I think when you're talking to people and you can just, break that belief that they've got of who vegans are, then I think that's a really powerful thing. Even if you have this conversation that doesn't seem that effective or whatever, even if all you've done is break that misconception that vegans are this kind of people, I think that's a really good thing as well. And so talking to people one-on-one and talking heart to heart with somebody, and realising that if you start talking about veganism, it's not like on the internet where they just start screaming bacon in your face. It doesn't happen in real life. You have a real conversation, and because of that, everyone's like, yeah, bacon I have it every day. Because of that, it's meaningful, and it's a significant thing to this person. You're literally saying something to someone in real time, and it just makes them question their whole life. Like they've got this big brick wall up that's their reality, right? And it's full of all these lies. You need dairy for calcium, you need meat for protein, vegans are this way and that way, and also they're really unhealthy and humane slaughter. You've got this big wall, and you just come in and talk to this person like a real person, not judgmental, not angry, not aggressive, and it's just this big crack with a sledgehammer into this wall. So I just see it as so effective, and you know, like these real life conversations plant seeds and form lasting memories in people's lives, where that could be the day where they started thinking about life differently.
Thanks. Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's really good to fuck with people's preconceptions of vegans. I have to say, conversation isn't one of my strengths, really. I know I can kind of stand up and talk and sit on a panel and kind of talk, but I actually find conversations with strangers quite stressful. I've got what's known as social anxiety. So I'm quite high functioning in many respects, but I shy away from conversations, so I think that's not one of my strengths. I will talk about veganism if people ask me. But I'll give you an example. So because that's not my strength, I tend to focus on other things, and one thing that we did here, which was last summer, I can't believe it was only last year, we held an exhibition by vegan artists, which was really great. I really enjoyed putting that together. So we exhibited, I think it was 18 pieces, some of which were really quite big. We had photographs by Joanne MacArthur, for example. We had one of my photographs we exhibited. We had lots of really talented animal rights artists exhibit their work here, and it was visited by, I think we worked out, it was visited by over 2,000 people during the course of the 6 or 7 weeks that it was here. And one thing I like about using art, I like artivism. It's a relatively new term that's been coined. The thing I like about art is I feel that it empowers the viewer. So they can choose whether or not they want to engage with the art. So therefore it kind of comes from them. You know, they sort of take control of choosing to engage with it or not. We found that quite a lot of people did engage with the art. Obviously, some people came specifically to the exhibition. Other people were coming incidentally to other events, but got to experience the exhibition around them. And one thing I did, because I curated the exhibition, so I chose the pieces, and I realised that after a while I was choosing pieces that which all featured animals, by the way. It was called Animas, the exhibition, so every piece focused on an animal, or several animals. And in most of them, they were looking directly at the viewer, which I thought was really powerful. I didn't kind of set out with that intention, but after a while I realised I was choosing pieces that all featured animals kind of looking out at the viewer. And I think that was really effective. We had lots of lovely comments in the visitors' book. Unfortunately, most of those were from vegans, so it's like really hard to gauge how non-vegans sort of responded. But the best thing was that a little girl actually chose to draw a picture of the beagle dog that I had photographed all those years ago. She did completely replicated the beagle dog, and I thought, that's brilliant. That is possibly, you know, a future vegan artist there. So that's another example of positive activism. I think you just got to work to your strengths, find out what you're good at, and then use that as a way to raise awareness of the things that animals are going through.
Now, actually, this next question is kind of a bit more for James. And now, James, as you were saying before in your little speech earlier, you've overcome a lot of hardships in your life.
Something he said?
You've overcome a lot of hardships. including obviously cancer. And I think when people often overcome hardships, it's easy to kind of have a negative outlook on life and see life and living as a very dark thing to do, right? And I want to know, how have you found it? Because you preach so much positivity and hope in your talks and when you have conversations. Why do you think it's so important to preach those messages when you're talking about vegan advocacy?
That's a great question, man. I know from experience as well that if you're not positive, then you're much more likely to burn out. If you're not focusing on the good that's happening, you're much less likely to enjoy what you're doing, to see so much meaning in it. Because I'm positive, because I'm optimistic, extremely optimistic about the vegan movement and everything that everybody's doing, you know, I go every single day, and I know that before, when I was less positive about this and I wasn't feeling so optimistic, I'd burn out every single week. So I think that it's extremely important to be positive, not just for yourself, but also to, again, break that vegan stereotype about what kind of people we are. It seems much more inviting when we're focusing on the good and the positives and everything like that. Obviously, what's happening is happening. You know, I don't need to tell you, but trillions of animals every year are being killed. We could talk about that. You know, the amount of types of cruelty and abuse and everything that goes on with it, we could spend weeks talking about it. But I think what's more useful is to talk about the progression and the things that are happening, and instead of how many animals are killed, we can talk about how many people are going vegan. And instead of being upset about, you know, we're at a slaughterhouse visual and all these trucks are coming in, we can, you know, with all these animals, full of all these animals, we can be excited about how many activists are there, and the new Save movement that's just kind of come up in the last couple of years, and all these things that are popping up everywhere. We can be excited about, as long as the list is of things that we could be negative about when it comes to veganism, there's an equally or maybe even longer list of all these great things that we can shine light on. And I think I can only speak for experience, but I've also spoken to a lot of people about this. There can be this feeling of guilt. I shouldn't be happy, they're not happy, I'm not going to be happy. You know, and I felt that for such a long time. How can I enjoy my own life when I know what's happening to them? You know, it doesn't feel right almost to be happy. That's what I felt. But really, if you have more happiness in your life, I think you're going to be a better activist overall. I think you're going to be able to sustain your activism for longer, and I think you're going to make veganism more appealing. So overall, by far, I think there's many more benefits to being positive, a positive person, for the animals as well. So really, I don't think that, you know, it's wrong to be happy and think, oh, what they're going through is so bad, I'm not going to be happy until this is over. I think we're doing an animals a far greater service by being positive people, by being shining lights and showing how great it is, and talk about the bad as well. But if you're going to do that, balance it out with all the good and then some as well, because there's so much of that to focus on. And that can be as simple as being careful with your words. So, you know, when the words come out of your mouth, monitor them and use positive language, use, you know, good, talk about the good in your life, talk about the good in your day, talk about the good in this movement, use those words that are positive, because all of that will add energy to your life. And if you start talking about all the negative and that this is happening and that is happening, all those words will have a negative effect on you as well. I believe that through experience. So I think it can be as simple as being very particular with the type of language you use. If you feel like you just said something that was just not very positively worded, just quickly balance it out, you know? And just remember that when you are a positive, happy person, that's what everyone wants to be. So people will wonder, what's so positive for all the time? What are you so happy about? And, you know, well, he's vegan. Maybe that's got something to do with it. And you can be like, of course, it has everything to do with it, whether it does or not. But, you know, and it does though. And so I think, like, yeah, we can get down about the animals, you know, and I've been there, and we're still all going to go there sometimes, but there's so much good happening right now. There's so much amazing things. let's talk about that. Let's build on that. And as the saying goes, which I don't have enough very good quotes. Energy. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. Thanks, bro. Energy goes where attention flows, right? And that will grow. I added that part.
Great stuff.
That's right, so that's that.
Yeah, great, thanks so much. So, Joey, this question's for you. And so, Joey was one of the first people that I ever came across who was doing street interviews on YouTube and uploading them for people to see. And as I said a bit earlier, inspired myself and a few others that I know to go out and do the same. And the question is, Joey, what inspired you, and why do you think that going out and doing street interviews, and more importantly recording them and putting them on the internet, was an important thing for you to do? And also, what kind of styles and techniques do you implement when you are doing these conversations and you're having these interviews?
Okay, so what inspired me was another YouTuber, probably the first vegan YouTuber I'd seen doing it, and we wanted to make a collaboration video together, and I said, let's do an interview together. So I set out the questions, and it was about karma. I already knew, I knew just how to set out the questions so it would set them up. Do you believe in karma? Do you think that if you do bad things it comes back on you? Then I'd ask the last question, do you eat meat? So it was a pretty cheeky line of questioning, and it turned out really well. And Martin, the guy I was doing interviews with, said, you're really good at this. You're really good at approaching people, you talk really confidently, and I felt like that it was a sort of a calling. So the next time I did it, I went out and did it by myself, and it was pretty nerve-wracking, like going out and, just questioning people's morality in a cheeky sort of way, but like polite, and they don't really know what you're leading them into till they're there. And it was quite nerve-wracking the first few times, and it still is a bit nerve-wracking because you don't know how it's going to go, but I always find that they're more positive than negative. I've had a few negative interactions, but the technique I used, and which I found effective, was I'd set the questions up so that I'd ask them a question about any issue of justice, and I wouldn't relate it to animals to the end. So whether that be about child kidnap, that was one of my first ones, the dairy ones. Child kidnap, where it was about serial killers who eat people, which I thought was quite a cheeky one too. I'd ask them questions about whatever it was, it was an issue of injustice. I'd bring it back down to the animals in the last question. So what about animals? And I think that's a very watertight way of getting people to question their own morality, because all people are against, well, not all people, most people are against injustice, and you just have to help them realise with clever questioning how that relates to the animals on their plate. And Ed, you do it really well too, mate. Really well. Yeah, so... Did I answer that question?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Louise had mentioned earlier that one of the pictures she'd taken was exhibited here. It's also exhibited in an exhibition called the Behind Closed Doors exhibition. And it really took me back, and in the image was a photo of a beagle. And I think what you've done is fascinating, and I'm really interested to know, what was it like inside the laboratories, and were there any experiences that you had there, or any images that you saw or remember that really stuck with you throughout all these years and kind of still sit with you now?
Yeah, don't get me talking too much about it. It's always quite close to the surface. So the photo of the beagle dog, it was featured in the exhibition we had here, and then, as Ed just said, it's featured in a second animal rights exhibition that was held at the Strand Gallery recently. And that was one of 24 beagle dogs that I worked with and cared for over a period of a couple of months. And it was really, it's like having really conflicting feelings, because it was great working with these dogs. Initially I'd been allocated to work in a rodent unit, which was a completely sterile unit, and you had to change in and out of all your clothes. And at that point, we didn't have the sophisticated, tiny little cameras that you have nowadays, only sort of quite big, clunky ones. And I thought, well, this is no good. I'm never going to be able to take any photos or video in here. I need to move out. So I kept requesting to work with the dogs where they didn't have these restrictions. And so then I did work with the dogs. And these 24 male dogs, they're only very young. They're about 4 or 5 months old, still, you know, barely puppies, really. And inevitably, you know, you develop a bond with the dogs. And I used to fantasize. I mean, I used to seriously try to plan, how can I get the dogs out of here, you know, when I go. I just couldn't help it. I just literally couldn't help it, because it's like, you know, look, we've got a dog over here. When you see them in the flesh, you know, you just want to take them away. You want to take them home, you want to be able to rescue them. And in the end, it just totally did my head in, and what I did was I moved on to a different laboratory because I couldn't handle it anymore. And I couldn't think, you know, I really tried my best to sort of figure a way out of how could I somehow get, you know, even if it was just a couple of the dogs out, but it was always going to come back on me, you know. I'd end up arrested, and so I couldn't, and I moved on. But it's, I kind of went into it quite naively, really. I was so excited by my friend's example. I was like, wow, that's so super effective, I want to do that. I hadn't really thought about the sort of personal consequences it would have on me, and it was also a project that I did on my own. So I did it independently, I didn't do it with the support of an organisation, and I only had a couple of people who knew. Probably the worst thing I saw there was, again, it was a beagle dog. Thank God it wasn't one of the ones I looked after, and this is one of the reasons I moved on. I decided to make myself watch a dog being killed and dismembered, because I was working for a pharmaceutical company, and it was the toxicology unit. So therefore, they systematically dismember the dogs to analyse all their organs and the effects of the drugs and other substances that they've tested. So I had the experience of watching a young, happy, healthy dog, you know, being put to sleep by kind of lethal injection. But weirdly, the kind of dog, it was unconscious, okay, so it couldn't feel anything, but it was still alive when they cut its throat and killed it, started dismembering it, because there was something to do with the blood having to be pumping out or something. And yeah, so that is something that stays with me, and I'll never forget, really. And that was something that the newspapers really kind of picked up on when eventually my investigation was reported in the national press. So yeah, but it was also a joy to work with those animals, and I launched a campaign to try and free the dogs that I'd worked with at that time. Sadly, the drug company SmithKline Beecham, it was, refused, and the dogs were all killed. But I'm very encouraged to go back to positivity, to know that actually some dogs do get out of laboratories now, not just ones that are liberated, but ones that organisations kind of actively work with drug companies to kind of be able to rescue and rehabilitate the dogs. So although I didn't get to see it with my dogs, I love watching those videos because it does happen now, and that's a really good thing.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us. It, you know, kind of been easy for you, and we really appreciate that. Yeah, moving on. I think maybe for James and Joe, this question: a lot of people say to me, and I'm sure they say to you as well, that they admire some of the work that we do, but they feel nervous or they feel anxious or scared about getting involved and doing it themselves. what are the things that you say to people who want to get active or who want to do something and push themselves outside their comfort zone to kind of give them that determination, inspiration to do so?
Get off your ass. Nah, I'm just kidding. I felt like that as well. I remember the first time I wanted to post a status about animal rights. I was so nervous, man. And I was thinking about it for a while. It was that really good quote about, man is such a strange animal. We kill all these animals, and then we eat the animals, and they kill us, and, you know, I don't know if you've read it, but it's just this amazing quote that summarizes just the insanity of what we do. And I was thinking about posting it, and I thought about this person who I admired in high school, who I looked up to, and I thought, I wonder what he'd think of this, which was really strange, because I hadn't thought about him in years. And I like still cared about his approval or something. All these years later, I hadn't even seen the dude. And then I'm like, who cares? I'm going to post it anyway. Hadn't heard from this guy for like 6 years or something. And then he was one of the first people to like the status. And I was like, where do you come from? You know, it was so weird. And it was like this little lesson for me, and I don't know if he really liked the status or whatever, but I think what he appreciated was that it was clear that I was doing something that I probably wasn't comfortable with. He knew me, but I was doing it anyway because I felt like it was right. And I think that a lot of people that I speak to, they're afraid of putting themselves out there. They don't want to ostracize themselves from their friends and their family. They don't want to look like this crazy vegan or whatever, but I think that if that is what you're worried about, firstly, you know, you can deliver it in a way that is going to be well received by people. You don't have to be this harsh, brutally honest, in your face person. You can be very chill about it, and I think that alone is going to lower the amount of backlash you're going to get, all about the delivery. That's also, I mean, like Joey said earlier, and like Gary Ruskin taught us both, is that you've got to put yourself in the animal's situation and speak up for the animals the way that you would want to be spoken for if you were there. So I think keeping that in mind definitely helps as well, but it's just about stepping. You don't have to jump out of your comfort zone into a year-long vow of silence straight away. No sane people going to do that. But what you can do is start with a status, and you know, just little things like this, just push out your comfort zone just a little bit, and as you do that, these new areas that you're in become your new comfort zone, where you can push it again a little further, a little further, a little further. And I think just by challenging yourself and, you know, knowing that if you do feel a bit anxious about it or whatever, it's probably going to be a lot less bad than we think, and it is going to help the animals, it is going to be meaningful, but as well, if you also realise that by just stepping out a little bit, it doesn't have to be much, it'll get easier, and it'll get easier. Now I post every single day. You think I think about it now? I never think about it now. You know, it's no big deal, so I just say, yeah, just do it, just try it, see how other people are doing it, who you think are being effective, and then just do it in your own way. And I'm sure you'll realise not only that the backlash is, even if you do get some, you're still going to be glad you did it because you still did something for the animals, and that really, you know, feels good in the heart. So you're going to realise that, but also I just think that, oh man, I had something really good to say, and I can't remember now. Just going to finish on something strong and it just escaped me. I don't know, I'll let Joey talk, and if it comes back to me, I'll tell you.
So the question's about courage, yeah? Yeah. So the thing about courage is it's not always something you're just born with. Some people are born brave, but it's something you work on, you build on, and it comes more and more. It's feeling the fear and doing it anyway, and you'll be surprised how liberating that feels. When I first got into spreading the vegan message, I mean, I come from the past that I spoke about with, you know, there's a lot of stigma of people that speak out, especially where I'm from. Like, I was afraid of like what my old mates would say, you know, like I used to be this, you know, gangster sort of, you know, cool guy, and now I'm speaking up like, my mate said something to me one day. he said, you used to be that guy that would walk up and stab someone, and now you won't even hurt a chicken. And I said, well, the chicken never done nothing to me or you, you know. So I gradually started speaking up more, and it was a really big step for me to get on YouTube. So I felt so exposed, so vulnerable. People would know where to find me, old people that I'd had confrontations with in the past. But I didn't want to let that hold me back, because I remembered why I'm doing it. And I knew that if I was doing it for any other reason than the right reasons, I would not be doing it. No way I would put myself in uncomfortable situations. People think vegans want to be out there on the weekends watching slaughterhouses, trucks go into the slaughterhouse, you know. That's like one of our favourite pastimes. No, it's not. It's uncomfortable. It's terrifying to see the fear in the animal's eyes, you know. These are things that you gradually work towards. And not everyone has to be standing out in front of a gas chamber like Ed was, you know, like straight away. But there's things that you do, like James was saying, to step out of your comfort zone gradually. And we're all in this together, just remember that. We're all supporting each other, like we all should be supporting each other, not criticising each other's work. We should be standing together. So remember that it's a movement of strong vegans, and we stand together. So if I can do it, if I can step out from where I come from, anyone can. So yeah.
So Louise, a lot has changed in the time that you've been vegan, and obviously the world has changed a lot very quickly recently. Are you happy with the way that the animal rights movement has changed and the way that it's progressed, or do you feel that maybe we left some kind of like tenacity behind?
Reflecting on so when I went vegan was 1983. It's a really long time ago. I just consider myself really lucky to, you know, just kind of met those, you know, had contact with those vegans at that time in my life, and then had the experience of reading the leaflet, which I connected with immediately. We were so lucky because in the 80s, the animal rights movement was at its height in, at that point, I'm hoping, you know, we're going to go again. But at that point, what was great was we had really sympathetic press coverage. So the ALF, Animal Liberation Front, were out rescuing beagles from laboratories, cats from breeding companies, all kinds of animals, and the hunt saboteurs were out doing their thing, they still do. And it was all reported really sympathetically. You know, they were portrayed as folk heroes initially. So all papers like the Daily Mail, you know, really supportive. So that changed quite quickly. By the time we sort of entered the 90s, the press had become, you know, less sympathetic, shall we say, and became eventually really quite hostile. The problem now is that the press won't really cover it. This is the main problem for us. But thankfully we have the internet, so we can make our own media, and that's what's happening. So the internet has just totally revolutionised everything. I mean, you know, there are some downsides to the internet, but in terms of promoting animal rights and veganism, I mean, it's just kind of exploded. And especially in the last 3 or 4 years, I would say, the level of interest in veganism has just increased, you know, beyond my wildest dreams. All those years ago, you know, I don't think I dared imagine this was a situation now where we are getting really sort of sympathetic coverage, and there are so many vegans out there, and new vegan entrepreneurs and businesses, and so it's really, really inspiring. I'm hoping that the other thing, to go back to those days, what was fantastic was, like, you had the Smiths. Does everyone know who the Smiths are? Because a bit shockingly nowadays I sort of mention the Smiths and sometimes people look at me blankly and I'm like, oh my god, am I really that old? But what was amazing was, like, in 1984 the Smiths had a #1 album called Meat is Murder. I mean, we had so many artists at that time, musicians, who were making music about animal rights issues that was, you know, making it to the top of the charts. It was incredible. We don't see that happening much anymore. But I'm hoping, you know, that there'll be, at least there's been a second wave of feminism. Come on, you know, let's really get there. And I think there will be another big wave. I think we've reached the tipping point. It's important to remember not to stay in your vegan bubble. I'm a bit concerned about the vegan bubble that we live in. And we need to kind of get out of that more. Otherwise, you know, on social media, it can seem like everybody around you, you know, is converted and whatever, but it's not true, you know. So I think we need to do more to kind of actually reach out to people we wouldn't normally mix with, reach those people somehow.
So we talked briefly there about kind of what the animal rights movement used to be. Now I'm wondering, James and Joy, this is for you two, what would you like the future of the animal rights movement to look like? Where would you like us to progress from here now?
I think that, like I said earlier, we'd have so much more happening if all vegans took it upon themselves to not just be vegan but become active, and, you know, just little things like joining the Saves and joining the Cube of Truth, or getting on the street, or making videos, or just showing you food on Instagram. You know, all of this would just, if every vegan out there now became an activist, things would just be in a whole nother direction, and in the same direction but in a much faster way. And I think there's so much room for more creative activism. We do a lot of the things that we've always done in this movement, which is awesome because obviously it works in other movements, it will work in this one as well. But now we're seeing new things, and things like the internet, which is giving us a new way of being creative. Some people do interviews, we can put speeches on the internet, we can make interesting little recipe videos. I mean, I don't even know, like I'm not overly creative in thinking about things like that, but a lot of people are. So it's like there's this whole area of being able to promote this message in so many other ways that probably haven't even been tapped into yet. And I think that, yeah, the main goal for me right now, and I think a big goal should be for a lot of vegans, is to make it seem very, very normal. So just being like, you know, veganism is for everybody, and anyone can do it however they want, and cover yourself in blood, like, you know, do whatever you want, whatever you think is effective. But I think a really good thing for this movement right now would be to really normalise it, because I feel like there's a lot of people out there that already agree with it, you know, and I think, oh, yeah, you're probably right, but, you know, then I have to be a vegan and I don't want to do that because this, that, and whatever. I think normalising it and just making it chill and just cool and things like that would help it go a long way. And things like getting into the media, if you can think of something big that can get us into the media, you know, like they put me in the media for my year-long vow of silence, and that vegan message reached millions and millions of people. So I think that would be a really good target for people to aim for, so that you can get, even if it's got nothing to do with veganism, but you can get in there somehow and draw people to you and your social media, even if that's all you can do. Like, that's still a great thing. I think though that utilising social media and that alone, utilising social media in a big way so that we can reach millions of people like that, but nothing else like that. So you're learning how to do that with your own social media stuff. Even if you've only got 200 people on social media, you know, like reaching them is still a lot of people, and that's like nothing what you had before. So you've got to realise, like, just because someone else might have 2 million followers and you're like, oh, who cares, I'll never get that big. Who cares? Being able to say something to 200 people every day is a massive step a huge step forward. And, you know, I don't really know what's going to happen in the future, but already we're seeing so much more vegan stuff coming out and so many more people. And so I just think that, yeah, it's a very, like, for me, it's a very exciting time for animals. I speak to so many people every single day who have recently gone vegan, so it's just like exploding. And, you know, as time goes on, I can't see it going backwards. We're going all steam ahead, and, you know, the more people helping push it forward, the faster it happens, which is exciting for us as well.
Well done. Another thing I just want to touch on, because James touched on a lot of things I agree with too, but solidarity in the movement, showing solidarity, working together, I've found that really powerful. Like just spending time with James, spending time with Ed, other activists, connecting with them, sharing your skills with other activists, help training other vegans who want to spread the message more effectively. I mean, we are stronger as a unit. We have all these groups that are separate. I think what I would love to do is just travel to other activist groups, bring some eyes to their movement, share my skills with them, connect with people like Ed and James and share. We've all got unique skills, and if we all share them with each other, and then we've got 50 Ed and Jameses out there all doing the same thing, and you know what I mean? I think that solidarity and togetherness in the movement helps you feel like you're not alone, and when you're a more confident and trained activist, you can spread the message more effectively. And where I want to see the movement go is to a vegan world, so whatever you can do to get us there would be good.
I think what James touched upon about normalising veganism is really, really important. I think even something as simple as wearing a vegan t-shirt works so well, because the more people see that, the more it normalises the word vegan to them. It no longer becomes like a fringe kind of movement, but it becomes something that's everywhere, and people can't avoid the word. And the more they see it, the more they'll accept it as being something they can do, because it won't seem outlandish to them anymore. And it's the same with these outreach events and protests. The more we're on the streets, the more of us are on the streets, and the more people see us, the more they can't deny our existence. And I think a big part of what stops people from going vegan is they want to pretend that it's this weird movement that doesn't have any veracity or authenticity. But the more that we kind of shatter that idea by being there and showing that we do exist and we exist in significant numbers, the more and more people follow us. I think as a species we do have that kind of sheep mentality almost, where we do like to do what everyone else is doing. And if everyone else is going vegan, right, then people are going to follow that and they want to go be vegan themselves. Yeah. That brings me to the end of the questions that I had for these three, but I'd quite like to have a little bit of time now for some questions from the audience. Now, I don't think that we have a microphone, so you might have to kind of project your voice, but if you do have any questions, then, yeah, this gentleman here went first.
Hi. So, when I talk to friends and family, I get good responses, I get bad responses, but the biggest difficulty I have is mostly with guy friends, and I think one of the reasons is because there's unfortunately a link between masculinity and needs. So I think you've alluded to it already a little bit in that we've got to normalise it and got to be positivity, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on how we can break that relationship between masculinity and needs.
Did everyone hear that question? Yeah, about the link between masculinity and needs. Okay, great.
I love this question because I see it all the time, and men are like, well, it's macho to eat a steak, or what are you doing, that's girly, eating vegetables, and I'm just like, wait a second, mate. We live in a society that defends children and the most innocent and vulnerable, okay? That's what makes you a man. It takes more of a man to stand up for the innocent than it does to participate in their oppression. And I think if you help them make that connection, that's why I wear a jumper that says defend animals. That's masculine, defending the innocent. And I would just highlight that, because they've got this lot of, I think it's advertising, that market state to men, you know, and it's like this masculine thing, but I think you have to help point out that it takes a man to stand up for those who are most vulnerable.
I love when you answer that question. I heard you do that before. You do it so well. Yeah. No, it's so true. I totally echo what Joey said, because there is this massive stigma about it, and it's weird. I'm sure, I don't know, this is my experience. Guys are more afraid of what the guys will think than what women are afraid of what other people will think. Is the thing that I feel like I've noticed. They're afraid of being seen as, you know, as weak or whatever. And yeah, like Joey said, it takes courage to do what not everybody else is doing. It takes courage to potentially put yourself in a situation that you might be mocked and ridiculed or said that you aren't manly for some reason. But that takes courage, and of course, if you compare the two, first of all, what is manly about going to the shop and buying a steak and sitting down and eating it? I mean, I'm not really sure why that is seen as manly, you know? That's what everybody's doing. So I think, yeah, it's a really great conversation to come up. When it does, don't be frustrated, be like, yes, I'm about to point out how much muted you are. Because it's something that obviously people haven't really thought through. You know, which is the same with a lot of these questions that people get. They haven't thought it through. They've got this catchphrase like, I used to have, vegans are extreme, you can't be healthy as a vegetarian. We've got a lot of them that we've got these ideas, these beliefs that are really baseless. And so to be able to have a conversation about it is great. What do you think is manly about eating meat? Like, you explain that to me, you know, and what do you think is more manly? Standing up for the vulnerable, innocent animals, or being someone who dominates them and harms them and kills them? You know, these innocent animals that can't even fight back. How is that manly? Explain it to me. You know, and get them to try to do that. And it's pretty hard to do that. Because it's not.
It's pretty hot though, isn't it, being vegan? From a woman's perspective. Yeah, I'd like to see more women kind of you know, expressing their desire for men who are compassionate. That's all I've got to say.
Any more questions? Yeah, gentleman down the front.
Hi. You know, one of the things is that in the Western world, or rather even in Asia, the vegan world is out, but we are not big enough for Africa as a continent. In Africa, there's not much activism, there's not much movement. I would exclude South Africa or Kenya out of it, but I think we need to find ways to indulge in Africa as a continent as well. So what do you think about that?
Just for anyone who can hear it, the question was, how do we make veganism and vegan activism kind of accessible in other continents such as Africa, where it's not necessarily, you know, heard of as much?
I definitely think that's important. It needs to be spread. This message needs to be spread everywhere. I think, though, first things first, we should, you know, focus on our own doorstep. You know, a place that we understand, a place that we know, and often other cultures will follow the West. So I think it does make sense to do what we can here, and most definitely it needs to happen everywhere. Africa, sure, of course. A lot of things need to happen there, but I think for me, it does make sense that I'm going to focus on being an activist here because I speak the language here. I know how to help people here the way that I was helped, and there's still so much work to be done right here. But of course, like, you know, some people will be more passionate about helping in places like that, and yeah, that would be a great way to be an activist, a great form of activism, absolutely.
Somehow the African continent is always ignored in every aspect.
Yeah.
Whether it comes to education, whether it comes to economy, whether it comes to anything. Africa is always being ignored continent.
Right.
I mean, this is what I know.
Right.
I haven't been much in Africa, but when I travel to many of South Africa, I can see they are staged, they're free. But there's so many other African countries where
That's sad to hear, man, and you know, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know why that is either, but
yeah, I think what we have to bear in mind, the issues that happen in poor continents is a much wider socio-political implications, right? And the thing about veganism and why this movement will help in these situations, we obviously know about the irregularity of food distribution in animal agriculture. But veganism itself is a shift to that socio-political climate that we all exist in, right? It's a change of mentality, it's a change of where we put our funds and the way that we want the world to operate. Now, what I can say about veganism and continents like Africa is if we were to see a vegan West, a vegan UK, our attitudes towards other countries would change because inherently we become a much more compassionate population, right? A much more compassionate demographic. So the way that we treat these poorer third world countries or poorer continents now would change naturally because we would change as a society. Now, if you want to look directly currently at this specific period of time, I think one of the reasons why we don't have many activists who may be travelling to these continents is the massive industrialisation of factory farming. And continents like Africa still haven't caught up in the same way that we slaughter necessarily in the West. So for me as an activist, I think for a lot of Western activists in general, our focus should remain here because this is where most animal suffering is occurring. And as James says, a lot of these concepts will follow suit in the sense that when we change our ways, they may well be forced to change their ways, or at least will look to adopt our ways. So it's an interesting question. There's so many points of it because it's highly political and highly socio-political, right? But I think that our attitudes towards these concepts, the way we treat them, will obviously inherently change as we do as a society as well. Any other questions? Yeah, this lady at the back. Hiya.
I don't know if it's the most serious of questions, but I've joined a lot of Facebook groups since going vegan, and one I think is generally American, Oxford. And there's been this post about creating this vegan island. I don't know if you've seen it, and I think I know the answer to what you're going to say. I know that we love meat is, fellow vegans and stuff like that, and it is like a great world that we'd like to imagine that everyone's vegan. But what is your ideas about having this whole vegan island?
I think we need the vegans on this island with all the meat and dairy eaters turning them vegan. We don't need us all stuck on an island somewhere. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Then they could use that. If you were stuck on an island, you don't want to hear that one. You don't want to understand.
I echo that. I think we shouldn't segregate ourselves, we should do the opposite, we should immerse ourselves. And as Louise said about the echo chamber earlier, that would be the most largest example of an echo chamber. We have to be here where the meat, dairy and meat is laid down here at the front.
I just think as well it would be beneficial to add to the thing about Africa and third world countries, that we are obviously ahead of them and they kind of follow us, and at the moment they're not able to implement factory farms into their countries, but I think so it's right for us to get ahead of them. So at the point where we kind of start to see factory farms as more of a bad thing, and our families then start to see it as more of a bad thing, it's less likely for the third world countries to follow us in factory farms, and I think that's kind of all their countries that we kind of can't tackle at the moment. We can stop them from going further into factory farms. And my question would be that what do you think is negative activism? Where do you think the line is? And obviously it's very subjective to everyone, but where do each of you think the line is in negative activism, and where do we go too far? And where do we see videos on Facebook and think, I don't think it's helping me?
So the question for anyone back in here is, where do we draw the line between positive and negative activism, and what do we define as individuals to be negative activism? Really good question.
Well, I think any type of activism that pushes people further away from veganism is definitely bad. Me and Joe were talking about it yesterday or today. You probably know Direct Action Everywhere. They do a lot of very bold actions, and some of them I love. They'll go into a shopping centre and they'll basically do chants saying it's not food, it's violence, and I'm standing in the meat section. That's bold, mate, that could happen in your supermarket. That would be great to see. Personally, it's not my style, but I think it's great. But then we saw one yesterday or whenever it was, where they've gone onto in the middle of a big football game, I think it was, or a baseball game or something, with this big banner that said "Animal Liberation Now." And on one hand, that's great, it kind of got the message there a little bit. But on the other hand, I think that probably did more harm than good, because literally all the people there, it's interrupted their game, which they're fanatic about, and I'm just guessing, but they probably would have just been annoyed by that, and it just pushed them even more into the realm of animal activists, vegans again, you know what I mean? And I just thought that was not a very positive form of activism. But in saying that, there are so many ways to do it, and some of them you won't agree with, and even that, just because I think that, I'm not saying I'm right, it's just my opinion, and I think that's how we need to be more in this movement. We need to be more accepting of other people's ideas, because most people are trying to help animals just like we are. So just like Joe said, it's about having solidarity, even with people who you might not do the same activism as, or you might not even understand it. You can be critical constructively with these people, and rather, like, so much, this is what I've seen a lot of, which really upsets me, and it's happened to me as well. People will shame other activists for their activism. First shamers will get shamed. I've been shamed before for different things. You know, activists, like good activists with their heart in the right place, have been shamed publicly online and things like that, and their name getting thrown through the mud. And, you know, I think when we do that, we are really shooting ourselves in the foot and doing veganism and animal rights a very bad disservice, because we have very few animal rights activists really putting themselves out there, and very many non-vegans out there. Very, very many. So I don't feel like we can afford, or I don't think it's positive anyway, but you know, we should be trying to build other activists up, and we should be trying to help each other grow and be better. And being critical in such a negative way is, I've seen activists burn out and never want to do it again, take months off social media, take months of activism, and longer, because of the way that they've been attacked by other vegans, by our own community. And I think we need to be really wary of that and realise that, you know, there's a way to be constructive with your criticism, and like, let's use that. Let's be a bit more tactful with that, because it's hard being an activist sometimes. You know, it's hard being a vegan sometimes as well. So I think, yeah, like Joe was saying, if we can just be more supportive with each other, even if you might not agree with a form of activism, you know, you can state why and go from there. But I think that it's also really hard to measure what is good and what is bad, because sometimes an action that you think might have thought was really negative might have planted a really positive seed somewhere that it's sprouted into something good. So I don't know, but yeah, that would be for me for now.
Yeah, I just wanted to, it's a difficult one, because different approaches reach different people. And so, for example, you could talk about the use of graphic imagery, for example, which I have used, and it can be really effective. Research says that it can be really effective as well. But there's lots of people who don't want to use graphic imagery because they're afraid it's going to upset people, and it will upset some people. So in a way, on social media, you constantly have this dilemma, or I do anyway. It's like, shall I share that graphic thing? Shall I hold back a bit? Shall I just share the odd thing? Shall I share graphic imagery every day relentlessly? You know, I think if you do that, you're not going to have anyone. They might remain your friend, but they'll probably have unfollowed you ages ago. To be honest, nowadays, even I kind of like don't really want to see graphic imagery, but then I'm vegan. I don't need to see it. You know, that's how I think about it. But yeah, one of my particular bugbears, I'm going to go out on a limb here, is, and it's about creating division within the movement. I want to see more unity. So one of my particular bugbears is abolitionist veganism. It really gets on my nerves, because veganism is abolitionist by its nature. That's what it is. Why are we creating another version of veganism that's a bit more, you know, strict, or I don't know what it is really. But it really, really annoys me, because it's just creating more unnecessary division. What we need to do is get behind the word vegan. If you understand what the word vegan means, you don't need to put a prefix in front of it that says, I'm a real vegan, you know. Vegans are abolitionist vegetarians, you know. We are abolitionists. We want to see the end of animal cruelty. We don't want to do the halfway house, where we're continuing to eat eggs and dairy, or, you know, contribute to animal suffering. So that's one example that I would say is negative. That's my personal opinion. It might not be shared. There might be abolitionist vegans, you know, very proud abolitionist vegans here. But I would say, do some research, look into the history of veganism, you know. That's what we are. We are abolitionists. Be proud of the word vegan. don't ever, I've always chosen to be upfront with the use of the word vegan, really. And I prefer to promote veganism. There are people within the movement who are arguing that we should be promoting, reducitarianism or vegetarianism to be more sort of inclusive. I don't agree with that. I agree with promoting veganism because that's what I think is right. And that's what I think animals deserve. And it's up to people. I think we, as vegans, you promote veganism, and then it's up to the people that you are kind of presenting this to, it's up to them to decide where they draw the line. It might be that they decide to not do anything. It might be that they start to reduce meat. It might be that they go vegetarian. It might be that they go vegan. That's really a decision for them, Our job is to promote veganism and nothing else. And that's
I just want to stick to that negative activism question because I've had an evolution in my activism. There's certain ways I will conduct myself now that I didn't before. I didn't think that conducting yourself, the way I used to conduct myself was swearing and aggression and reacting to anger as an emotion instead of responding logically. I don't think that was as helpful. Even though I turned people vegan, I had a strong animal rights message. I personally think I could have been just as powerful, turned more people vegan, had more people watching me if I wasn't swearing and being aggressive and just venting. So that's something I will watch out for. Also, the way that you conduct yourself as an activist, let's just say you're wearing a vegan t-shirt that says vegan on it and you're conducting yourself like a fool, you're not even mentioning anything about animals, about what veganism is, you're just going about your day doing bad things to people with a vegan t-shirt on. That is bad advertising for vegans. I don't care what you say. Like, that there is just shining a negative light on vegans. And with the criticising other activists thing, you're criticising people doing good things for animal rights who are spreading a vegan message. I don't know where that comes from. I think that might come from a dishonest place. They're not actually criticising them. They might be upset that they're doing something that they can't, so they try to bring other activists down. Good activists, I mean, like animal rights activists. I don't think that's helpful. And yeah, that's basically what I think. I think you've got to be careful how you conduct yourself. And if you're promoting eating animal products, like was said before, I think that there's not good vegan advocacy, no reducitarian, no meatless Mondays, stuff like that, no way. It's just a clear vegan message, everyone should be promoting that, and other than that, then we're sweet, yeah.
I think one of the things I just want to say is I think as activists we should be willing to acknowledge mistakes that we make and willing to acknowledge that we always have a progression to make. And by no means are any of us in here any better than any of you at all. We all have our unique voices, but the beauty of it is we should all be able to be willing to learn and educate ourselves, and importantly admit to our mistakes. And making a mistake and doing something that might not be considered positive activism or effective activism is okay if you learn from it and kind of like have that time to self-reflect and say, what did I do there? What can I do differently next time to make sure I don't make the same mistakes, or I don't accidentally advocate for reductionitarianism or anything like that. Don't beat yourself up about it. It's always a journey, and always looking to progress and become better advocates. It's getting late, so maybe one more question. Go on.
Just firstly, just to respond to what you said about Africa, the more strongly growing movement in Europe and in Australia and in the USA, the stronger the movement will grow and filter out to other countries. So we just have to be really strong here and continue our activism. But the question that I had was, during outreach, how do you deal with challenging, confrontational conversations, and how do you remain calm? That's something that I'm working on.
Good question, yeah. The question of that is how do you deal with challenging people in outreach events to, give you some hassle? Yeah, great question.
I think this is a very important one because I think being educated on veganism is probably a major key to this, because if you don't know the answer to what they're saying, you're going to get frustrated. And I found that myself. If they ask you a really tricky question, you're going to get frustrated. So if it's something you don't know, always ask them if that justifies stabbing animals in the neck for sandwiches. That's like, that is, if they ask you some weird, wacky, out there question, bring it back. Does that justify what I'm talking about? So don't let them, so be educated as an activist and make sure you bring it back to the point. Respond, listen to what they say, respond calmly, rationally and logically. And if you're an educated activist and you don't let the emotion rile up, you can really bring a conversation back down like that. I think it's not for everyone, I wouldn't say that. It's certain personality types that do a lot better on outreach. But if you find that outreach just isn't for you, you feel too nervous, I wouldn't say for you to be on outreach. I'd get you in the queue or something like that, because we need, like I said, different skills for different people. So yeah, but like I said, be educated, bring it back down to the point. Respond calmly, rationally, logically. You've got the truth on your side, so there's no need to get riled up.
Well, I don't really, as I explained earlier, I try to avoid too much contact with strangers. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it doesn't happen really at all now, but at the beginning when we opened this place, you might get somebody walking in who'd be really totally affronted that we didn't serve any meat, and getting a right strop about it. We felt like we couldn't really do a lot about that, really. That was their problem. But what was I going to say? I think it's really hard, but I think often people who are behaving in a particularly aggressive way are probably people that maybe have the greatest potential to change. Yes, there's going to be a certain percentage of dickheads who just want to wind you up, but there's also a certain type of person who doesn't realise how upset they are, really, and they're projecting a lot of stuff on you. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference, but I think if you can try to sort of keep connected to that person in some way, it's really hard to remain calm. I'm not very good at remaining calm. My partner Frank is much better at that. I want to give a big up to Matt Swin, who's behind the bar at the moment, because Matt is the person I wish in many ways I could be, but I'm not, because I have social anxiety. But Matt works as a builder, so he's constantly on a daily basis challenging that masculine stereotype about being vegan. And I love the fact that Matt never shuts up about veganism, but he does it in a really, really good way. And I don't have those skills, I kind of wish I did, because I really admire him. But on a daily basis, he's meeting people who are sort of, saying bacon at him and taking the piss all the time, but he stands his ground and he gives as good as he gets. And sometimes he's even physically attacked for it. I'm not going to go into any more details, but yeah, sometimes that happens. So it can be really hard. I think just do your best all the time, just try to do your best. I think it's so important what Ed said as well. Yes, we've all made mistakes, yes, we all fuck up. The really important thing is to try and sort of acknowledge to yourself, okay, that wasn't great, I used to go out, I went once out on with the hunt subs, which I thought was great because it's like direct action. And I couldn't remain calm. I just got so upset and was, I felt myself getting really aggressive, and I just thought, no, I can't actually do this anymore because I'm just going to end up in a situation with somebody. So I stopped doing it, So it's important to sort of know yourself, know your limits, and as we've all been saying, work to your strengths. Find what you're good at. If you're good at outreach on the street, conversations with people, great. Do that. If you're not, then just find another form of activism that you can excel at. And we all have something that we can excel at, for sure.
I strongly agree agree with what Joey said about if you don't have the answer, you are going to be frustrated. I've done nearly 200 speeches now and a Q&A after every single one. And there's only one time that I've lost my cool, which was recently. Yeah, real soon. With a religious person who was using religion to justify eating animals. And I lost my cool a little bit and thought about it later. I thought, man, I'm so jet lagged, you know, I've never done that before. And actually thinking more about it, I realized it wasn't just the jet lag. I've been tired before in my Q&As. It was that I did not have a very strong answer for this person. And the reason why I lost my cool is because it came from a place of frustration, that I couldn't get this person to logically see what I was trying to say. And I knew that my argument was weak because I don't know much about the Bible, and that's probably one of my most challenging conversations to have with people. So I think that's very much true that if you, and here's the beauty of it, there's 100 of these myths or lies or objections that people believe. There's an answer to every single one that clearly shows that veganism is the right way forward. Even with the religious one, I just didn't have a very strong one. So all you have to do, one thing that will help you a lot to avoid that frustration and that anger is to get a strong argument for these answers, for these questions, I'm sorry. There's mainly 10 that people ask. Free-range protein, humanely slaughtered animals. What if we don't eat them? Will they kill and eat us? All these kind of things, you know what I'm saying? People ask this stuff, it's legit. What about plants, And it's real, like people seriously are questioning it. They've got all these objections. But when you have a strong answer, they haven't even finished the first 3 words of their sentence and you're already like, I got you on this one. What? And it's fun, because you're always winning. So there's that. That helps so much. Becoming educated doesn't take long. I used to watch people answering these questions when I just became vegan, and I was like, man, I wish I had those words. I would love to be able to answer like that. You never lose. Everyone around you will be going vegan. And, now I can answer those questions, and a lot of people around me go vegan. And it's just through practice and through taking the time to get educated on the facts and questions that come about when you are talking about animal rights. It doesn't take long at all. So I'd say that's a very strong point. Also, I think what helps a lot is to realize that we're not having a fight with an enemy here. Although they might see you as an enemy, it's important to see them, I think, as friends. Someone that you're trying to help. Not that you're trying to be right, you are right. Someone that you are trying to help see things clearly, because they don't already. And I think if you come from that place of you're trying to help this person, you're not there to blame and shame them, you're there to inform and explain. You don't hate the sinner, you hate the sin. And we must also forgive them, for they know not what they do. It's not their fault that they were born into a world that has taught them that this is natural and normal and necessary. So I look at people like victims. I see them as victims of this brainwashing, of this propaganda. And I want to help them because they're doing something that if they really understood what they were doing, they would be appalled at. And they're killing themselves by eating these foods, and they're killing the animals. So I think that when you really come to a place of realizing that these people aren't the enemy, even if they think you're theirs, they're not yours. They're someone that needs help, and you're trying to help them, and you're coming from a place of love and compassion, even when they might not be coming from that place. And the beauty of coming from that place, because love is such a powerful force, compassion is such a powerful force, often they'll be trying to bring you down with their negativity and their anger, and it can get frustrating. But if you can stay coming from that good place and really come from the heart with it and focus on answering those questions with love, like you would a child who doesn't know any better, then not only will you feel better in the interaction, but there's a good chance that you will lift them up as well. And instead of them bringing you down, you can lift them up, and this interaction is going to be far more powerful and memorable in a positive way. And it will plant the seeds that are actually going to grow into something special. So that's that.
I think education is the most important thing. Watch documentaries, read articles, just educate yourself as much as you can about every area of veganism, animal exploitation, the environment. Just so as these guys say, when you get asked a question, you just know how to answer it. And I think another thing to bear in mind is if you feel yourself getting angry, if you feel yourself going down a route that you don't think will be productive or effective, bring it back to why you're doing this in the first place, which is the animals. Now, how can you best be an advocate for the animals in that situation? And if the answer isn't getting angry and isn't getting frustrated, then make sure you don't get angry and frustrated, because at the end of the day, you're there to do one job, and if you're not doing that job very well, you need to reflect on why that is. So bear the animals in mind, I think you'll be absolutely fine. But yeah, that really brings us to the end of it, because I think we've been going for quite some time. I just want to...
Go all night, man.
I just want to raise attention to a few things. So as you guys are coming in, most of you have been given a few different flyers. So one of the flyers is for the Animal Rights March, which is happening on the 2nd of September. So for those of you who don't know, we're organising the big Animal Rights March. Last year we had about 2,500 vegans marching through the streets of London, and it was a tremendous day. So we're recreating it again this year. We want to make it bigger, louder, brighter. And the thing about the march is we want to be hopeful. You know, I think a lot of the time vegans, as we discussed, can sometimes be seen as quite dark, depressive, pessimistic. So we want to subvert an idea, march through London full of hope, and share our success stories and be bright about the future. So we encourage people to wear bright colours and kind of promote leaders in a really positive manner. So we'd like to see as many of those as possible. The second flyer we gave you was the documentary called Land of Hope and Glory. So Luna and I have been working on this documentary for a few months now, and basically it is in essence a UK Earthlings, in the sense that we've compiled footage taken from UK factory farms, UK slaughterhouses, from vigils, and we document the process in which we exploit animals for food here in this country. So we're really excited for that to come out. It comes out on the 1st of August. So what we'd like for you guys is to share it and hopefully watch it as well and learn something new. So that's why we give you that flyer. Next Saturday here in Karamel again, we're doing a fundraiser for the Animal Rights March, which is basically just a kind of vegan club night. So we'll be drinking. There's a fantastic DJ called Danny Howells, who is a vegan activist and a world-renowned DJ. He's been touring for decades, plays really great music, so it's been a really fun vibe with vegans, man. I mean, what more can we ask for? It's £5 for tickets, so you can buy those online or you can buy them on the door. I think maybe a little bit more £7. So if any of you are free next Saturday and want to have a few drinks and let your hair down, have a dance with some great music in the company of nice vegans, then that's what we're there to do. And one more thing, on Thursday there is a protest happening outside the Danish embassy, which is a protest against the systematic slaughter of pilot whales in the Faroe Islands, which is something that happens every year. It's been happening for, I think, hundreds of years. It's a horrible, horrible, atrocious act of violence against innocent, beautiful whales. So if you are angry and rightly so, and you're free on Thursday, then join Sea Shepherd and some of the other amazing activists outside the Danish embassy from 12:30 to make your voice heard. Danish embassy is near Knightsbridge Station. Right, so, and we have one more thing, a special appearance, right? So, just before I announce, can I give a big hand for Joey,
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I know you're busy, on this tour around, so thank you so much for, taking the time to come and speak to us. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for everything you all do. It's truly humbling to hear your opinions and hear your voices. So,
Thank you too, man. Thank you, Luna, and everybody else doing something. Thank you very much.
exactly. Thank you to everyone here. Right, so we have a poetry recital, or a poetry reading from Lucy, who is an activist who does regular events here with us in London. So please can you give a warm hand for Lucy.